Government class. With you today is Ms. Wokoma Tamuno. Today, we'll be looking at the concepts and principles of government as our theme. And our topic for today will be the types and characteristics of government. We'll be looking at Federalism, Part 2. In the course of this part of our lesson today, we'll be looking at the different features or characteristics that make up federalism, and then we'll look at the resources, how resources are being controlled in the federal system of government, and finally we'll take a look at the merits or advantages and demerits or disadvantages of the federal system of government. And so at the end of this class, I expect that you should be able to identify the different features of a federal system of government. You should also be able to examine how these resources are being controlled in a federal system of government, and then you should be able to state the merits or advantages and demerits of the federal system of government. In our previous lesson, we talked about federalism, where we looked at government, which is a body that is being set up by a state to organize and coordinate the state and manage its affairs. And we also talked about how different countries today adopt different types of government. We further went on to look at different types of government, where we saw the types of government such as the unitary government, we saw the monarchical government, the federal system of government, and the parliamentary system of government. We also looked at the definition of federalism, where we said federalism is a type of government or a system of government whereby constitutional powers are being divided or distributed between the central government and component units such as states, regions, and local government. And so today we are going to be looking at some characteristics or features that makes a state or a country a federal republic or a federal state. Now, where we see things like some of the features we are going to be considering today are supremacy of the Constitution, written or rigid Constitution, constitutional division of powers, autonomy of the government units, then Supreme Court as the apex or the highest form of judiciary rulings. Now, in a country where you see all of these being practiced, it is safe for you to say that country is practicing the federal system of government. Let's take a look at them one after the other. The characteristics. The first on our list was the supremacy of the Constitution. Now, in a federal system of government, the Constitution, which is the source of power to the government, the people, the ruled and ruler in that country, is supreme. And now it is supreme because it is the source of power. It means nobody is above that power. And so the Constitution is respected and observed as supreme or as being supreme over every other law prevalent in that state or in that country. And then, for example, we know that in Nigeria, the Constitution we uphold as supreme is the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Another feature to note in a federal system of government is that the Constitution is rigid and written, or it is written and it is rigid. Now, we have different forms of constitutions. We know we have the written, unwritten, we have flexible and rigid. But then in the federal system of government, the Constitution is found in a written form, and then it is mostly adopted but difficult to amend. It means that you cannot easily change the laws. A level of government cannot just wake up and say, oh, let's put in this law, let's take out this law. No. In a federal system of government, it is hard or it is difficult for the government to change and amend laws that are being contained in the Constitution. This is one feature to look out for in a federal system of government. Another feature is the constitutional division of powers. We said that federalism, like we defined, is a system of government where constitutional powers are being divided or distributed between the government or between two levels of government. Now, we know that the governmental powers in the country adopting federal system of government must be distributed or divided between at least 2 levels of government, which are the federal system of government and the component units, such as states, regions, and the local government. And so that's also a feature to watch out for in a federal system of government. Another feature is autonomy of the government units. Now, the 3 tiers of government, like we all know, which are the federal, state, and the local government. Have autonomy from the Constitution. So to a large extent, they have powers to act independent of the other level of government. They can fund for themselves, make laws, enact their laws, and things like that. That's because they have a level of sovereignty, they have autonomy, and they have independence, or they are independent in their own jurisdiction. And lastly, one other feature that is very important in a federal system of government is the Supreme Court. In a federal system of government, the Supreme Court must be one that has independent judiciary. Now, this is established because in sharing of these powers between the different levels, there should or there will be some level of disagreements, some levels of discord, between these levels. And then they need a body that will be able to interpret the Constitution, interpret the powers that are being given to different levels, and how they should actually function in those powers or with those powers. And so there should be a body that will be able to interpret the Constitution, proffer solutions to these disagreements and issues that will arise out of the power sharing between the center and the constituent units, or its constituent units, or the central government and the various component units. And this body, which is the Supreme Court, should be seen as supreme, or is seen as supreme to every other court that is operating in that land or in that country. For example, in Nigeria, we have the Supreme Court of Nigeria, which is supreme to every other court in Nigeria and is found at the apex of all courts, meaning the highest point of all courts. Resources. Now let's take a look at how resources in the country practicing federalism is being controlled. But before we go into it, I'd like us to have a good grasp or understanding of 2 keywords, resources and control. Resources, when you hear the term resource, what comes to your mind? Resource actually means wealth, minerals, raw materials, assets, and other things that a country or the people have access to and which they can use to further produce wealth and develop their own economy. So whatever you get within your land, be it within your people or from your environment, that enables you to access wealth and further use it to produce and develop your country, it can be seen as resources. But then control. Control can simply be seen as power to regulate and to have dominion over something. So then let's see how the resources in the federal system of government is being controlled. The resource control is one feature that is very vital in a federal system of government, because the way in which resources are being controlled in a federal system of government might not be so in other types of government. Now, in a federal system of government, the component units in the country practicing federal system of government, they have the right to control the resources in that state. Remember, we said the component units are states, regions, or local governments. Now, they have the right to control the resources that are found within their states, within that local government, within that region. It could be resources such as mineral resources and agricultural resources. Now, when they do all of that, take, for example, River State, we could say we have mineral resources. We could also say, oh, some areas have agricultural resources, and so maybe out of our mineral resources, we get to do crude oil, and then we have oil. Now, river states could actually bank on that, work on it, make wealth through it, and also use the wealth to develop their nations. Because now they have control, they are to have control over that resources that is prevalent in their land. But then, the way it is being controlled is that these states or component units that have control over the resources will now contribute a particular percentage, which is the approved percentage, and give to the central government, which will further use it to develop the country. Okay, so what we mean is the component units or the states, local government or regions actually have control and right over these resources that are found in their land and within their jurisdiction. And then they come at getting it and making wealth. They take a particular percentage, which is the approved percentage, and they contribute it to the central government, which will further use those contributed resources to develop the country. So that's how resources are being controlled in a federal system of government. Having looked at that, let's look at some advantages or merits of the federal system of government. Now we know the features, we also know how resources are controlled. Let's take a look at the merits or advantages of federal system of government. Some of the merits are economic advantages, integration of various groups, the government is brought closer to the people, supremacy of the Constitution, and employment opportunities. Let's take a look at them one after the other. The first is economic advantages. One of the advantages or one merit of federal system of government is the economic advantages. Now, a country practicing the federal system of government has one advantage, which is that it enables the country to utilize their resources at different levels of government. Because, remember, we said that at the states, the federal and local government, they have control over their resources or the resources that are located in their territories. Now, because they know that development is in their hands and that they will give a particular percentage to the government or to the central government, they will actually work hard and try to make sure that they get so much, out of their resources that they will utilize and bring about development, not just to their own states or regions, but then also to the country at large. So one advantage is that the economy actually will receive so much boost because every state and every region will want to work hard to make sure its own region is being developed through economic advantages. And then the second is the integration of various groups. We had said that one reason why federalism was adopted was for the government to be able to find a system of government whereby the interests of the different ethnic groups in a country such as Nigeria will be actually met or their interests will be protected, so to say, yes. Their interests will be protected. And so one way also is that federalism brings about integration of these different states, local governments, or regions. It fosters unity and it's through different things. Now, the central government at the center tries to bring them together by doing different things. It will be games, like in Nigeria where we had the central government actually brought about Festac 77. Festac was a cultural carnival that brought the different ethnic groups together. So you see that in one way or the other, federalism aids unity. The government is able to unite these different or various groups in the country together. Another is that government is brought closer to the people. Remember, we said a very big country like Nigeria cannot just have only a central government at the top ruling everybody, because the man at the grassroots area will not feel the administration of the ruler, meaning he will not feel the rulings of a ruler in the country. But whereby federalism brings about the distribution of power. Power comes from federal down to state and down to local government. It means that the man at the grassroots region is also able to have an impact of the government of that administration. And then what does it do? It enables these people to participate and to also benefit from the different things the government does. Federalism actually now brings government, which is divided into smaller units, closer to the people, like we said, and enhances, makes them participate in the interest of the government. For example, the government could come up with programs such as the NAPEP, which is a program established to eradicate poverty. We also had the programs such as Better Life in Nigeria, which was also to help the women, the rural women. All of this is government that is being felt at the grassroots region. But then if government is just at the central, it cannot be felt. So one advantage of federalism is that government will be felt even by those at the grassroots region because it's actually shared into smaller units. And then the supremacy of the Constitution. Now, in a federal system of government, the Constitution, like we said earlier, is supreme. And when we mean supreme, it means there's no other law above this Constitution. Now, this Constitution provides certain democratic principles that actually play out because the Constitution is supreme. Now, what it means is that because the government is actually bound by the laws provided by the Constitution, they cannot act outside the Constitution. They are supposed to act within the powers that are provided for them and stipulated in the Constitution. And so things like regards for human rights will actually be played out. There will be rule of law in that nation. The citizens will participate, which is citizens' participation, and then there will be economic freedom, there will be equality. It means that the people's rights will be respected. Everyone will be seen as equal in the courts and even in the society. No one will be seen as bigger than the other. And then the people are able to benefit from all of these provisions from the Constitution. So that's one other advantage that is being enjoyed in a federal system of government, whereby no one is above the law. Everyone have been actually made to respect and to act within the laws, making those rulers and the ruled to act within the laws. And lastly, employment opportunities. As a result of the duplication of offices, in the federal system of government, like we said. And so where we have at the central level, or central government, we have offices, right? At the state level, we also have these offices duplicated. For example, we have the office of the Minister of Education. At the state level, we still have the Commissioner for Education. That's why where you have the ministries, like in the secretariat in each state, you have different ministries. These ministries are also found there at the federal level, and you find them in the state level. For example, again, you have the office of the Minister of Health. You have Commissioner for Health, too, at the state level. So we can see that the offices are being duplicated, both at the federal and the state level. And what this does is that, as a result of these ministries being duplicated, more people are given opportunities to work. Those working at the federal ministry are not the same people that are found in the state secretariats working. So this gives room for employment and increase in employment opportunities. Having looked at all these beautiful advantages that are seen in the federal system of government, there are still some lapses that the federal system of government faces or has, and they are the demerits or disadvantages that are found in a federal system of government. Some of these disadvantages or demerits are slow decision-making, duplication of offices. Yeah, I know you should be confused. Why? Rigid constitution and expensive to operate. We'll look at this one after the other. Now, slow decision-making. In a system of government whereby federalism is being practiced, you find out that making decisions could actually take a longer time than in a situation whereby you have only the central government. Now it is seen or experienced more in matters that are relating to the concurrent list. For example, in the federal system of government, we know that in the concurrent list gives room for the central government and the state governments to function or carry out their powers, right? Now, in a system whereby only the central government is allowed to make decisions, you see that they'll make decisions and they'll take it and it will be fast. But in a situation where you have both of them, they must come to an agreement before they carry out a particular project, or they come to an agreement to carry out a particular function to bring about development in the country. Let's take, for instance, road. In constructing the road, now the federal government wants to construct this road, a highway road, and then the state is also involved. You see that in giving the contract to a company, for instance, they must come to an agreement on what company to give. If it were to be just the central government, it could just sit up and say, let's company A take this contract. But then because it has to do with the two levels, you see that maybe the states might say, no, let company B take the contract. And by the time both of them spend to deliberate on issues, why A or B should or should not take the contract, you see that it consumes a lot of time. And before you know, time has gone. So that actually slows down the process of decision making in the federal system of government. And in times where you need, or times like for emergency, this poses as one very big disadvantage, because emergencies are things you need quick answers to, but then you might not get it that quick in a federal system of government. Duplication of offices. I remember in the merits we said duplication of offices had its own positive side. We said it was going to give more jobs to more people in the country. But then it's also playing a role as a disadvantage, because in a federal system of government, the duplication of offices might actually be unnecessary. Why? As a result of duplicating these government offices, it might be very difficult for people to be held responsible for one inefficiency or one lapses that might occur in the government. Now take, for example, something goes wrong, and this ministry says, no, it's not supposed to be us. It's supposed to be the other ministry from the central. Do you understand? And so the duplication of the office becomes unnecessary, because people try to shift blames and responsibilities, which will further bring about inadequate delivery of services, low productivity, endless conflict and frustration, because people will keep fighting. Where you're trying to put the blame on the other office is trying to put the blame. So you see, this duplication of office actually poses to be a disadvantage, as people will actually not be able to be held responsible for what has gone wrong, or can even lead to lack of accountability. Lastly, rigid constitution. Now, one other demerit or disadvantage in the federal system of government is the constitution being rigid in nature. Now, the constitution, like we had said, that is being adopted in the federal system of government is written and rigid. Its rigid nature makes the constitution difficult to amend. And in a world such as ours that is moving, growing, progressing, it will be good for the governing bodies or respective bodies that should amend the laws to be able to also put in new laws, take out old laws, and then make the country and its laws to also move with the trend and progress of the world. Another disadvantage is that it is expensive to operate. The federal system of government is an expensive one to operate, and this is because of the duplication of offices in the federal system of government. We had established the fact that offices you find at the central government are also found in the states and most times the local government areas. And as a result of this, it is expensive to furnish those offices, to also get good personnel for each of these offices to carry out different functions and responsibilities. In all of this, money is involved. And so in doing all of these, it becomes expensive to manage or maintain a federal system of government in a country. I'd like to say we've come to the end of the class for today. But before we go, I'd like us to take a quick recap on all we learned today. We talked about the characteristics of the federal system of government, and we said some of them are: you will find a written constitution in a federal system. There must always be constitutional division of power in a federal system. The constitution is supreme, and then the government units have autonomy to themselves. And then we looked at resources and how resources are being controlled in a federal system of government. We said the resources in the component units of the country are controlled by the units, and then they contribute a certain percentage to the central government, which they use to maintain and also bring about development to the country. We further went on to look at some merits or advantages and demerits of the federal system of government, where we said some of the merits are the supremacy of the Constitution, which makes people to act or gives the limitation to people's responsibilities and actions, or even laws and rulings that go on in the country practicing federalism, because they cannot act or function out of the provisions given to them by the Constitution. And then we also saw that government is brought closer to the people, and that's one advantage, because in federalism, which is mostly practiced in a very large or big country, will indeed touch or be felt and have impacts even in the lives of the people at the grass level. So we said that's one other advantage. And we saw the demerits, some of the demerits as it being expensive to operate. We said as a result of the duplication of offices, personnel needed in these offices is expensive to also operate. And then we looked at the Constitution being rigid, which makes it difficult to amend at any point in time in the country. We have indeed come to an end to the lessons for today. But I'd like us to take a quick test to know how well you understood today's lesson. The question reads, one main feature of federalism is that, dash. A, the Constitution is unwritten and flexible in nature. B, the constitutional powers are divided between the central and component units. C, the constitutional powers are divided between the states and local government units. Which one of these is a feature of federalism? Okay, if you picked A or C, you're wrong. The right answer is B, where we're told or taught that the constitutional powers in a federal system of government are divided between the central and component units of that country. Let's see the second question. The question reads, which of these is not a merit of the federal system of government? Which of these is not a merit of the federal system of government? A, supremacy of the Constitution. B, high cost of operation. And C, increase of job opportunity. Okay, again, if you picked A and C, you're wrong. The right answer is B, because the supremacy of the Constitution is an advantage. Increase of job opportunity is also an advantage, but high cost of operation is a disadvantage. I'd like to say we've come to the end of this class of Federalism Part 2. I hope you understood a whole lot and you enjoyed the class. Thank you. See you some other time.